it's Chloe and we're back with another video. So you guys have been asking me, what's my thoughts? Have I watched this video of, listen to this podcast, I should say, of David from Ready to Love, ex-wife, talking about their marriage, okay? And you guys seem to have, had me thinking that it was a lot going on, okay? I went in with my notebook, my pen. I was ready to really, get these notes going. I thought I was about to be in here dragging David, okay? Because, at one point she mentioned she felt unsafe in the house and just a lot of different things that was going on in this. And all I really got from this was that, if you're going to speak on something, speak on the whole situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my notes and I'm going to tell you what I think about the podcast and the ex-wife and the relationships and all that good stuff, okay? So in her first marriage, she said that she dealt with infidelity, physical abuse, and when it got physically abusive, that's when she decided that she was done with that marriage, okay? Then she said that she was single for 5 years. 5 years she was single. Then she said she met David, okay? Now, she didn't say his name, so I'm assuming that that's who she's talking about. Since everybody else assuming it, I'm just going to go with it, okay? Now, she said that he was a man after God, okay? She witnessed him preaching, teaching, casting out demons, okay? He knew his Bible inside and out, okay? She knew this man was the man that she wanted because in the first marriage, she knew she wanted a man who was a God-fearing, and she didn't get that, okay? So this time she went looking for that God-fearing man, and when she found him, that was it, okay? They were abstinent, meaning they did not have sex until they were married, okay? Because in the first marriage, she was saving herself for marriage, and then once they, started dating a couple of weeks after, she done gave up the draws and then decided that she was going to marry him anyway. So what's the big deal and saving myself still. Okay, so in this marriage, she wanted to do everything right. She found her man who worshiped God and loved him and lived his life by him, okay? And then they were waiting for marriage to have sex, okay? He was in with it, she was in with it. And we know that because David expressed to us in this season that he wants to wait for marriage to have sex. So I'm assuming that David is not one of those people who just out here having sex, which will lead me to think that he's not a cheater, okay? Which she also mentioned that in her marriage with him, there was no cheating and no abuse. She said this. This is what she said. She said that a lot of their arguments turned into big arguments, but there was no cheating and no abuse. This is what she said, y'all. I'm not saying this, okay? She said that something happened between him and his child that she decided it was time for them to separate because she felt unsafe in her home. She felt unsafe with her kids. Now, this had me thinking, is she one of those women who don't hit my kids? I don't believe in spankings. I don't believe in that. That's abuse to a certain extent. There are people who believe that if you hit your children, you're abusing them. So maybe he was disciplining his child in a way that she did not like and she decided it was time to go. Because remind you, in the first marriage, as soon as it got physical, that's when she left, okay? Now, but this is when I started to get annoyed in this podcast that I'm listening to, because if you're going to speak on someone and something in a situation that happened when you're talking about the reason why you left this marriage, give us details. I started sitting there like, how did we get all these things that people were saying about him from her telling us absolutely nothing? No, seriously. I was listening to this podcast like, am I missing something? I need to know what I'm missing because everybody was like, oh my God, he's so controlling. Oh my God, he's so this. And I was sitting there like, I missed all of that. Please break it down to me how you guys figured that out. But anyway, so then let's just bring it back to David, okay? When David was talking to Liz, he did cry. He got very emotional about his ex-wife leaving him and how he never wants to be left again. And that was a little bit, concerning for a lot of women because it's like, what happened in that marriage? Everybody want to know what happened in that marriage. And here I am thinking that this lady was going to give us some details of what happened in that marriage, but she didn't, okay? So at this point, we don't really know. We know that there was no physical abuse and we know that there was no cheating involved, okay? But she said something that stood out to me when she said she experienced all things in both of her marriages that could have led to divorce, okay? She experienced spiritual abuse. So I'm gonna assume that maybe he was spiritually abusive, okay? She said she had financial abuse. And she also went into details with stories about financial situations, which she didn't really censor it around him, but I feel like maybe he had a gambling problem, okay? Because she's like, if someone spends this much money on something, then I would want to know, where did this money go to? And I would need to see, the receipts. And then there would be, consequences for your actions that they was going through in therapy. So it made me think at one point, maybe he was gambling, and gambling is a sin. Okay, so maybe that was one thing that it could possibly be. He probably was being spiritually abusive, okay? He was probably trying to get her, because she did mention at one point about being submissive to your husband, and how men will use that against their wives to stay with them in different situations, because they feel like you're supposed to submit to them. If you live by the word, and the word says submit to your wife, submit to your husbands, and if you're not doing that, then you're not a good wife. So maybe she was being spiritually abused as well. So I'm going to just say that what I learned from this podcast episode was absolutely nothing. All the conclusions you guys have made about David being controlling was from him wanting passcodes and passcodes to the phones that he mentioned on the daggone episode. Now, nothing in this, besides the fact that she said that she had experienced spiritual abuse and financial abuse, because we know the Lakers player, the first husband had money. So the financial abuse definitely didn't come from him. Unless, now that I say it, the Laker husband was because he was the breadwinner, making her feel like she just had to accept whatever was going on because he made the money. So who's to even say that that was the case when it came to David? She never really told us why they divorced. She kept saying, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at things and I'm just not figuring it out. Then the only solid thing that she gave us was something happened between him and his son that made me feel unsafe. It made me feel like I had to get my children out of there. Now, unless he was literally abusing his son, I can't think of what he could have possibly been doing. Unless he was sexually assaulting his son, I'm trying to think of what could have happened in that house that made her feel unsafe. So maybe the way he disciplined his children, because remind you, they've only been married for 1 year. So maybe he got to the point where who knows what happened between him and the son. And he finally got to the point and was like, I'm going to give him a spanking. I'm going to whip him. And for her, maybe that looked like abuse, because we already know signs of abuse for her, she's out. And maybe he was spiritually controlling. Maybe he was emotionally abusive. I don't know. And I'm not here to say he was or he wasn't. I'm just telling y'all what I got from the podcast. But what I am going to say is that there's two sides to every story. There's her side, his side, and somewhere in between is the truth, okay? So until I hear his side, and then I can put two and two together and figure out what's going on all the way around, I'm not going to say that he, did anything detrimental to this woman, because we don't know his side of the story. But I am going to say I'm not victim shaming her. She decided what was best for her, and she decided to leave that marriage because obviously she wasn't happy in that marriage, and she was dealing with a lot of things that was going on in that marriage. But I feel like if you're going to go out on a limb to start talking about something, and you're trying to give people good context into why you did what you did, and why you left, and why we need to trust in God, and why we need to do all of these things, then you might want to give us a little bit more information so that we could understand and see it for ourselves, if that's the case. I felt like the podcast was supposed to help people move in certain directions, and I really didn't get, as a Christian woman listening to the podcast, I didn't understand in the second marriage why she left. The first one was very clear, straight cut forward. Like if he was dealing with certain issues, why not say what these issues was if you was really out here trying to help other women who were dealing with maybe separation and divorce? might be going through those same exact things so that we can notice it. Because it's like she was very cautious with what she wanted to not say. You already on the podcast talking, you might as well let it out at this point, because like I told y'all, all I got from this podcast, all I got from this podcast interview was that he did something to the son that made her feel unsafe in the house. Now, what that was, I don't know. For all the people who still feel like David is controlling, y'all felt that way before y'all listened to this podcast. This podcast didn't make you feel that way. Y'all felt that way before this. This just added context to why you may have felt that way. But it didn't change my context when it comes to him. Maybe he is spiritually abusive. Maybe he is emotionally abusive, or was back in the day. But that's nothing that you can't change from. What I am going to say is, though, I think he still needs to be at home healing from the trauma of this relationship instead of going to find love. Because what he's doing is he's bringing all that baggage, like when he sat there and cried to Liz about how he was just how he just don't want nobody to leave him ever again, okay? He hasn't healed from whatever trauma he dealt with in that marriage as well. So is it too early for him to maybe be looking for love? Absolutely. Maybe he needs to go home next off the simple fact that he isn't whole. He isn't ready to love. And that's all I got for y'all. Y'all let me know what y'all think down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Let me know if you agree with me or not, okay? You know, I'm open to all opinions, all right? With all that being said, you guys, peace.